And we thank you for just one more day, for your mercies are new every morning. Your faithfulness is amazingly great. Thank you for loving us so, Lord. We pray this in your Son, Jesus' name. Amen.
All right. Thank you, Pastor Harris. Before we actually get started with the program, with the candidate forum, I'd like to bring up Mr. Ben Graffin with the League of Women Voters. He's going to give us a few tidbits, a few little nuggets that he's going to share with us.
All right. Thank you very much. Breezy asked me to do this when I came in tonight. I would have had a different shirt on. In the light of disclaimers, I want to actually start with two from the League of Women Voters. The first one is, we're not all women. The second one is, we too do not endorse a candidate, but we do endorse issues, and we endorse informed, active participation in democracy. And I want to remind folks that you're not only here for a great reason tonight, but this summer we have had meetings for school board candidates, county commissioners. The League of Women Voters the other night did a whole evening on the 6 amendments that people will be voting on. If you want to be an informed voter in this county, you can be. And you're showing that you are by coming out tonight. So we want to thank you very much for that you become informed by becoming involved in the democratic process, and that you practice democracy by participating in it. So share your thoughts when you go home tonight. Make this not just a night that informs you, but let it have some talking points that you can share with your neighbors about what you hear this evening. And vote your values. It's an important distinction that the League of Women Voters likes to make. And I'll add one last little point. If you're wondering about candidates who aren't here this evening, there is a website called vote411.org that we have petitioned all the candidates in local races, asked them questions, and their answers are up on that site. So you can find information there. But sit back and enjoy this forum. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Graffin. Right now, I'd like to bring the candidates up, Attorney Blair Allen and Judge Catherine Combee. Could you please come up to the dais? Give them a round of applause. Oh, on this side. Yeah, this side, because it's steps. Okay. You're welcome. Hi, how are you? Okay, thank you. All right, now we're ready to get started. I have the distinct pleasure of introducing our moderator for this evening, the Honorable Aramis Ayala. Aramis Ayala is an award-winning civil rights advocate, cancer survivor, and professor who has dedicated her life to the pursuit of justice. As Florida's first Black state attorney and a fierce opponent of the death penalty, she has made local and national headlines for her courage and proven leadership. In 2017, she received the NAACP Civil Rights Champion of Justice Award and was named an Agent of Change and a cover story for the American Bar Association Journal. Last year, she was named the Champion of Justice by Harbor House of Central Florida for her work in the fight against domestic violence. Aramis grew up in Saginaw, Michigan, received a Bachelor of Arts from the University of Michigan, a Juris Doctor from the University of Detroit Mercy School of Law, and a Master of Science in Criminal Justice from the University of Central Florida. She has observed the far-reaching, multi-generational effects of systemic inequality and began her commitment to criminal justice reform early in life and took root when she relocated back to Florida in 2001. This marked the beginning of her work with the people left behind by the system. Having witnessed the consequences of structural inequality during more than a decade of public service, Aramis refuses to stay silent in the face of inhumanity, injustice, police misconduct, and systemic racism. Following her 4-year term as state attorney, Aramis joined the Legal Studies Department at the University of Central Florida as an assistant professor. Prior to running for office, she served as a homicide and major crimes assistant state attorney and as an assistant public defender. She has also held positions as an adjunct professor of law at the Florida A&M University School of Law, a legal analyst, and as a chairperson of the Citizens Police Review Board for the City of Orlando. She is a past president of several local and state bar associations and has served as the Florida Bar Board of Governors ex officio member. On a national level, she was the regional director for the National Bar Association and was appointed to chair the Pro Bono and Public Service Committee of the National Bar Association. Aramis Ayala made history in 2016 and then again in August 23rd, 2022, when she defeated two Democratic opponents and became the first Black woman to receive the nomination for Attorney General for the state of Florida. Now, that deserves a round of applause right there. Although unsuccessful in the general election, Aramis continues to impact her community and the state as a proven leader. Aramis is happily married to David Ayala, and they have two daughters. She enjoys reading, cooking, and traveling. Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Aramis Ayala.
Thank you very much. That was a long way to say a whole bunch, but I appreciate it. I appreciate you reading all of it because I worked hard for all of that. All right. Good evening. My name again is Aramis Ayala, and you know, I appreciate you all being here, and I promise I'm not going to make either one of you uncomfortable as it relates to being overly connected with me because you're running for office. I get that. All right. Now I want to go over a couple of the rules that are going to happen. It's candidates forum, which means that you are here to learn more about the candidates. You want to understand how they think. You want to understand how they're going to perform and how they're going to be in office. And that's why you're here. I want you to take a moment. It's easy to look to a seat and think, oh, it's empty. And you think of all the people who should be here. Just remember you're here. And you have to remember who needs to be here is in fact here. So I want to recognize the organizations, sororities, fraternities, as well as League of Women Voters for your work. But at this time, we're going to dive into some questions. Neither one of the candidates know what the questions are. And I want to make sure we get answers to the questions. And finally, judicial candidate. I want to make it clear that judicial candidates do have some constraints. There is a thing called Canon 7. And in Canon 7, it limits what they can do. And why is that? Because judicial candidates are supposed to be impartial, and they're also supposed to appear impartial. So no person running for judge should be saying what they would do in an abortion case, because that means they prejudge the case. No judge should be saying what they would do in a gun case, how they would rule with it when a police stops in a motion to suppress. They cannot do that because they must appear impartial. Now, Madam Public Defender is a little bit different, may be able to answer some of those questions. But if you feel at all that they're not answering the questions, I will help you understand one of two things: that she's evading the question, which I'm going to give her some benefit that she's not, or she literally just cannot answer it. Ready to get started? All right, let's do it. We are going to have candidate intros that are going to be 3 minutes each. And after the intros, we're going to go through some questions. They will have 3 minutes each to answer the question. And then we're going to open it up for some questions from you all. And then they will have 3 minutes for a wrap up for their conclusions. And let's get started. So why don't we go ahead and start with the candidate intros?
So good evening. Thank you for having us here tonight. My name is Blair Allen. I'm running for Public Defender of the 10th Judicial Circuit. That includes Polk, Highlands, and Hardee counties. This is a universal election where everyone can vote regardless of political affiliation, and the race will be decided on August 20th. So a little bit about me. I grew up here in Lakeland. I was born and raised here. I graduated from Lakeland Senior High School. Go Dreadnoughts. And then I went away to college. I went to school up in Virginia at Washington and Lee University, came back down, went to law school at Stetson College of Law, graduated in 2006. I started out as a prosecutor at the Bartow office, and I practiced there for a year before deciding I am much more aptly suited as a public defender. So in 2007, I switched to the public defender's office. Since that time, I've worked in nearly every division of the public defender's office, from the trial division where I have defended clients accused of all sorts of crimes, from low-level misdemeanors all the way up to cases where the state was seeking the death penalty. I have worked in our administrative division, supervising other lawyers within the public defender's office. I have worked in our appeals division, handling clients' convictions to the district courts of appeal. I've handled thousands of clients' cases with our office because I love what we do. I love what the public defender's office does. And some people ask me, how can you defend all those criminals, right? And it's a question that you might have. And I tell people, I don't defend criminals, I defend the Constitution. And that's what we do at the public defender's office. Under the Sixth Amendment, every American is guaranteed the right to a fair trial and effective legal representation. The public defender's office gets court appointed for people who cannot afford an attorney but are charged with either a crime or in another circumstance where their liberty is at issue. We don't have a choice in who our clients are. I love each and every client I've ever represented because it is our ideal system of justice. I've been a public servant my entire career. I grew up here, and I know that the best way to give back to my community is by continuing to serve my community, being elected the next public defender. So I hope when you leave here tonight that I have earned your vote and your support to be elected on August 20th as the first female public defender that we've ever had here in the 10th Circuit. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I forgot to, go ahead and give it. I apologize. We have our two Vanna Whites up front, and they are the timekeepers. So they're going to let them know when there's 20 seconds left and let them know when there's time. So when I say 3 minutes, I actually mean 3 minutes. All right, your turn. Intro.
Good evening. I'm Catherine Combee, and I'm running for Circuit Court Judge. I'm currently a sitting judge, but let me tell you a little bit about myself. I was born and raised in Polk County. I received a AA from Polk State, which wasn't called Polk State then at the time. I went to USF. I started in the medical field. I started as a medical technologist, and I decided that wasn't what I wanted to do, so I went and got a master's in microbiology. And then I went, and someone encouraged me to get a PhD. And so I went to the medical school at USF and got a PhD in medical sciences. And I began working in the hospitals, providing laboratory services. And I eventually ended up going, to a commercial lab, one of the largest commercial labs in the country, and ended up going to Herndon, Virginia. And I lived there, and talk about the number of different types of people from different kinds of nations, from different kinds of countries that we dealt with on a daily basis. It was the largest lab in our organization. And from there, I went on to be in corporate, where I dealt with quality control, scientific affairs, and was one of the first women to be an assistant vice president in the company, as well as a lab director when I was in Herndon. And from then, the companies started buying each other up. I got involved with the legal system, and I thought, I want to go back to law school. And I went back to law school at Stetson in St. Pete. I got my law degree. Then I went, and as I did that, I worked in internships, and I worked with various judges. And when I walked into the courtroom, I said, this is home. This is where I want to be. I like the energy. I like what happens here. And so I was able to I started as a prosecutor, and then I eventually ended up having my own business. And then one day I decided to run for judge. And in 2012, I ran for judge. I wasn't supposed to win, but they didn't tell the voters that. So I was elected. I love my job. I love what I do. I'm not going to tell you that it's not stressful. I'm not going to tell you that I don't take it home, that I don't feel for the victims, that I don't feel for the defendants and their families. And as a judge, I get to see the impact of actions on people, not just one-sided. But my goal is to give back to the community, and that's why I went into healthcare, and that's why I went into the legal system. I wanted to provide give back and to do good for people.
All right, thank you both. You know, the first question was an introduction. You both talked a little bit about the job. We have people out here who may have their idea of what being a public defender is or what being a judge is. Can you explain to those listening what you see your job as, what you believe you will be doing, and not just the textbook description version, but what's in your heart? What do you believe the job of a public defender is, and what you will be doing, and what do you believe that a judge is actually doing?
That's a great question. My job as a public defender is to help people, period. Oftentimes our clients wind up in the legal system because of untreated trauma, of untreated mental illness, of substance use disorder, of all sorts of reasons, homelessness, of criminalizing poverty. Not because they chose this path, but because they were unfortunately never received treatment. So oftentimes when people come into my office, they don't understand the legal system. It is incredibly confusing, even to someone who has experience in it. It still can be confusing. So our job is to shepherd people through what is one of the most challenging and stressful times in their life, and to try to provide them with some type of guidance through the system, with hope, with advice and counseling about how we are going to fight the state's case, how we are going to stand up to the government, or how we're going to try to get them a reasonable plea offer that they want. Try to connect them with services that could address some of those issues, and hopefully help them in a time when they are oftentimes confused and alone. I can't tell you how many clients I've gone and visited at the jail, and do you think that they have family members that are coming to visit them? Do you think that they have other people in their community that are coming to visit them? Oftentimes, they just want to talk for a little bit, not necessarily about their legal case, but they just want to talk. And so if I, as a public defender, can make that connection with a client and get them to trust me, then when it comes to a point that we need to figure out how they want to handle their case, and I can give them advice, public defender is to earn our clients' trust moving forward so that we can help them in the best way that we can in terms of the legal situation.
As a judge, my job is to follow the law. It's to be fair. It's to listen to people. It's to be and give them ample opportunity to tell me what their feelings are and what they want. Sometimes it's better that they don't say anything, and that's why they have a lawyer. But one of the things that is I'll give you an example of a typical day. So a typical day in a jury, and I'm currently in felony. I've been in other divisions as well. I've been in family. I've been in civil. I've been in dependency, delinquency, and those probably don't mean anything to you, but let's talk about the criminal where I am now. A typical day would be get in at 8 o'clock, go and meet the jury, qualify them. I don't know if you've ever been qualified as a juror where there's like some basic questions that you answer. And then while I'm qualifying, the attorneys are going through their sheets because you fill out sheets when you come in as jurors, and then they're ready to bring in the jurors. So then we bring in the jurors, and it's my job to keep us on schedule. It's my job to make sure that each side has a fair trial. It's my job to be neutral and to not make spaces or not give anyone any indication of what my thoughts are on the trial, because it's the jury who's going to make the decision. And then the attorneys run the trial. But with my assistance, with my providing, the jury's job is to find the facts. It's my job to give them to law, and it's their job to apply the facts to the law. And that would be a typical day. What's interesting is when we have school children come in, and we have people from colleges come in and they watch a trial or they watch a process. If you come into arraignment, which is the first time anyone comes into the courtroom when they've charged with a crime, and the numbers are 120 people may be in that courtroom at some time during that day. And the parents are the ones who go out and say, I had no idea. I had no idea what this was like. Because there will be pleas taken, there will be people sent to pretrial or the next step in their process. But it's our job, my job, to be fair, to be neutral, to follow the laws that our legislators make.
All right, thank you. Follow up, because you opened up a thought that I had. For both of you, what would you say is the most publicly misunderstood aspect of the job, public defender and judge?
That public defenders only work 8 to 5 or 8 to 3, or, are public pretenders. We hear that a lot. I know that the people that I have worked with over the last 16 years are some of the most experienced, best highly educated, most caring attorneys and staff that are out there. And the reason for that is because they're not doing it for the money. If they wanted to make money, they could make so much more money out in the private sector, working in private practice or doing other things, but they choose to work for the government, for the public defender's office, because they believe in what they do, because they care about our clients. And they believe in a fair justice system for everyone, and that's why they do what they do. I know that a number of you all know Jade Coleman. She is one of, if not the best criminal defense attorney, period, that I've ever seen. I mean, she's incredible. And she works for the public defender's office because she believes in what we do, and she loves our clients. So it really frustrates me as an attorney when people have this perception that we don't work a ton of hours. I will tell you, I've spent nights at the jail. I've spent weekends at the office, away from my 4 children, away from my family, because I'm preparing a client's case for trial. Especially when you get involved in serious litigation, cases that last several weeks. I rarely saw my family during that time. And that's because I believe in what we do and how important of a role that the public defender plays in our justice system. So we don't work 8 to 5. It is not a standard work life. And there really isn't much of a work-life balance. It's more of a work-life juggling act. And we do it because we care.
Thank you.
I don't think people realize the amount of behind the scenes that there is. For instance, a witness doesn't show up, and because the jail is on lockdown, what do? How do you coordinate the trial so that it goes smoothly, so that the jurors don't know that there's an issue? How do you get the number of jurors that you need for a trial? Because if you're going to have a 5-day trial, you need more jurors to consider than you would for a 1-day trial, because a lot of people don't want to give up 5 days of their life. I don't think they see the prep that goes into walking into that courtroom. The staff attorneys that we have access to when we have a legal question that an attorney brings up as an objection, and we have to rule on it, and we have to rule on it pretty quickly because we're in the middle of a trial. So I don't think that people understand the back and the volume, the sheer volume that is in our court systems. I know that there are 5 judges, for instance, in felony. Each covers about 600 to 800 cases, and that's a lot of cases. That's a lot of people. And in family, there's up to 1,000 cases that people are handling. And I don't think that people realize how many more people now, especially in criminal and family, are deciding to go pro se, and how ill-advised that is. But as far as judge, I think people see what's on TV and they think that's what a judge is. They walk into the courtroom in the robe, but there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes before and after the trial that people don't know about or see or consider, and it's a lot of logistics so that the jury doesn't see. But
yeah, it's not TV, right? I would love music to play when I walk down the hall, like Law and Order. That's not what happens. You both also opened up two different questions, but I'm going to start with yours, Ms. Allen, that you talked a little bit about the perception of public defenders. I have had the opportunity to serve as an assistant public defender for 10 years of my career. And I struggled with the reputation that public defenders had, because I really could have gone and got rich, but I was driving this car, not paying student loans, but I could not say no to my clients. You know, each time you think you're going to leave, the trial is up and you're like, no, I got to get this trial, then it's the next trial. So my question is different for both of you. First, Ms. Allen, I want to ask you, what do you do as the public defender to try to manage that reputation that is pervasive in our community of how lazy or unintelligent or whatever word that has negative connotations? What are you going to do as the next public defender to curb that? My question to you, Judge, has to do with some of the perpetuation of that from the bench. You know, a lot of times public defenders complain that, you know, they're ready to go to the podium, but a private attorney walks in and, you know, they get pushed to the side. Their client is like, I have to get to work. I'm not wealthy enough to get I'm going to lose my job. So my question to you after she answers hers is, what do you do from the bench to manage that negative perception and not perpetuate it?
It starts by leading by example. The elected public defender needs to exemplify professionalism. That starts with how you act, how you conduct yourself, how you dress, how you interact with other people, whether it is staff within the office, whether it is clients, whether that are members of the community. But it starts by exemplifying professionalism as the elected public defender. I hope to be able to get out in the community, much as I'm doing here tonight, because I want the community to know me as the elected public defender. I want it to be where if you have a church member or somebody's nephew or somebody down the street that gets involved in the legal system or gets involved in our juvenile delinquency system, and you find out that they have a public defender, you can say, wow, I know the elected public defender, Blair Allen, and she is professional. She has high standards. She has a high level of ethics. And I know that she is only going to employ those people who also have those same qualities. And I know that whatever it may be, my community member, my fellow citizen is in good hands, simply because you all know me. Without that at the top, you cannot expect to see that from the rest of the office. And we will change the perception of what people think of as the public defender. I want the public defender to be the most professional, educated, highly skilled person in that courtroom, and we will be.
Great, thanks. Judge?
Well, the first thing I do when someone asks for they'll ask for a public defender if you ask them if they want a lawyer, and I quickly correct them that you need an attorney, and an attorney works for the public defender. In a courtroom, in felony, for instance, well, that's where the public defender would be. They can step to the bench at any time. They're not overlooked. One of the ways that we've dealt with it in the past is that the private attorneys have their own days, and the public defender have their days. And that's when large dockets are dealt with. But in the normal course of business on a day when not much is scheduled, it's who's ready in my courtroom who would go first. And it's not just the private attorneys who can go first. The public defenders go first. And honestly, if I have a assistant state attorney who does sex crimes, and I know she's got to be in 4 or 5 different courtrooms, or he does, I might even call them to the podium and say, let's do your cases so you can go to the next courtroom. So that's how I handle it.
Great, thank you. Judge, one of the things that you mentioned was the extensive amount of work that is behind the scenes that's coupled with the enormous caseload that public defenders, have and are known as one of the reasons, oh, you don't know my case until you got to trial, all of that. My question has to do with how we handle files when they're really people. How do we bring more humanity to courtrooms and less file concepts and perspective? Yeah, I'm sorry. So, and again, I'm trying to distinguish between your positions. So the question to you would be, in your office, how do we ensure that the assistant public defenders are handling each file as a person, who could be facing, like you said, the most difficult time in their life, even though it's another file for them. And in the courtroom, how do we actually go through the cases and see them as a human being?
Yeah, we try to focus on talking about clients, not talking about cases. It's not a case, that is a person. So I think it starts with changing the nomenclature and how we are talking about what we do. We represent people, we don't represent files. I also, in all of my files, I like to have my client's picture. I want to know immediately when I open that file who that person is. And I think that starts to try to personalize it. Also, as much as you can, having those and encouraging those conversations with clients so that it is not just a burglary case that you're defending, it is Mr. John Smith that you're defending. And once you start rethinking about talking about what it is that we do and who it is that we represent, it changes the way that you interact. I mean, we have, and I've said it before, some of the best lawyers in the circuit, maybe in the state. I mean, Jade Coleman is still in trial tonight. It's now 7:10. I mean, that's not an 8 to 5 job, and she's defending a person. So I think it starts with kind of reframing what we do at the public defender's office and how we talk about the important work that we do and the people it is that we're representing, which is people in our community. These aren't criminals. These are your fellow community members, and starting to rethink that and personalize it.
Excellent. Judge.
Well, one of the things that we do I do is greet them when they come up, acknowledge them that this is who they are, and watch, because the attorney does a lot of the talking. They don't talk. But when they do talk, for instance, when you're taking a plea or they need to speak because they're testifying, you can watch their body language and read what they're saying and try to be compassionate about what and be able to respond to how they're saying. Because a lot of times the attorneys won't see the same reaction I will, and I will stop. I've stopped pleas, I've stopped all kinds to talk to the person to find out what is going on and whether they want to go forward, whether they understand. So I think that's how you make, it's always a person, but it's not just one person. It's the defendant, it's the person, but it's also a family. It's the family of the defendant. It's the family of the victim. It's the people who are hurt. And I think I never realized that until I took the bench and I watched some of the devastation that it does to both sides when these people are involved in DUI manslaughters and things like that. And it's not just one person, it's the whole family that's involved. And to recognize that it's people that you're dealing with, and I'll be honest with you, there are times when I go home and it's hard. It's hard because you take it home with you, because there are 5-year-old kids. There are lots of impacts that have. There's a baby who's no longer living because of someone's actions and the impact that has. And so I try to be responsive to the people who come in front of me. There is a lot of numbers of people, and sometimes it's hard, but you can gauge someone with their reactions, with how they're speaking or how they're acting, and the eyes go up, and then you have to stop and say, what's going on?
Good. All right, let's buckle up. In the intro, I was known as recognizing and being very honest about issues with poor people. I am very honest about systemic racism in our legal system. So I'm going to give you a breather to let you know that that's coming, but this question isn't that. As the elected state attorney in Orange County, I started a conviction integrity unit, where it's a unit that really checks the integrity of convictions because we get it wrong. I mean, I don't know if you all know that Florida leads the nation, not the state. We lead the nation in death row exonerations. That means we get it wrong the most. All right. We have to recognize how often we are getting it wrong. So conviction integrity units are intended to make sure that we have the right person incarcerated, the right person with a criminal background. I had a judge, when I first started, contact me. And she said, this case has been bothering me for 15 years. I think I got it wrong. We were able to take it through, and ultimately he was released. That goes to my next question. Have you ever woke up in the middle of the night or spaced out during the day and said to yourself, I think I messed that case up, or I think I messed that up? Is there any case from your legal career that makes you uneasy and makes you uncomfortable? And if there is, can you tell us about it?
I think any lawyer who says they have not messed up on a case either hasn't tried that many cases or is not being honest. Over the past almost 17 years that I've been with the Public Defender's Office, I've defended thousands of clients. I wake up in the middle of the night all the time wondering if I should have done more. If I had done one thing differently, would the result have been different? You beat yourself up about every case that you have lost. And any case that you've won, you just kind of put up on a shelf and you don't really think about much, because what keeps you awake at night are the ones that you've lost. And I tried a case with my mentor, Howard Dean Garrett. Some of you know and remember her. Gentleman was charged with first-degree murder. This would have been 2010 or 11. I think it was 11 that the case went to trial. There was no body ever found, and he was charged with killing a coworker out at the Lakeland Airport at a business out there. We lost the case, and he was convicted of a lesser and is serving a lot of time in prison. And it's now 13 years later, and I still remember that gentleman, and I still remember his case, and I just remember the feeling walking out of that courtroom, realizing that we lost the case, and the elected public defender at the time, Marion Mormon, took Howard Dean Garrett and I into his office and said, I'm going to take you girls to lunch, take you ladies to lunch, and we went out to lunch, and he said, go home for the rest of the day, come back tomorrow, ready to fight and ready to file your notice of appeal. And it helped me realize that even cases that you feel like you really messed up on and you wish that you could have done something differently, you have to get up and you have to open that door to the office the next day and continue to defending your other clients, because they are also depending upon you. And if you get torn up about a case and you don't go back into that office, then you're doing a disservice to the rest of the clients that are depending upon you to make sure that you make their defense a priority as well. Thank you.
I would be kidding myself if I didn't think that I got some stuff wrong. But fortunately for me, there's a district court of appeals that can look over what I do. But if I'm made aware, or if I become aware of a mistake, I try to correct it before it goes any further. But the thing is as a judge, I may see a mistake or I may see something, but I can't act without having the defendant or the defense attorney or the state involved and them bringing the action. Otherwise, I will get appealed for stepping into a situation. But I will also tell you, I cannot talk about any cases, and that's Judicial Canon 3 and 7. But, and I'm not trying to...
Fair.
Yeah, it's true.
I've made it clear that I would let everyone know if what you're, I will support that. I will also say that both of your shows of humility is impressive, at least to me, that it lets you know that you're willing to work. Now, I have a question for you both. What do you believe is at the root of high rates of incarceration for minorities? Yeah, please. You're like, you can have this one first.
That is a really tough question. I think that we do not want to believe that we practice in a system that is racially unjust. I don't want to believe that. I'd like to believe that we live in a perfect system, but I know that's not true. So, we are constantly trying to point out, whether that's during jury selection, about whether there may be any jurors that are potentially biased, or feel differently about my client who's a person of color versus my other client who is not. And we constantly are trying to argue to the court about that as well. I don't think that our state attorneys or prosecutors or the judiciary is trying to be overtly treating people differently, but it does happen. I've seen it happen. And as public defender, that is one of our jobs, is to be able to point that out, to try to make sure that people should be treated equally. So I think that it's a combination of issues. I think that's an issue. I think it's also an issue about who gets originally arrested. And I think that, if you start looking at people who get arrested, it may not be that a law enforcement officer is hanging out in South Lakeland waiting for people to run the stop sign and then pull the people over. May not be, but it may be that in different areas of town that there are officers who are pulling people over at a higher rate. And that leads to more people, perhaps people of color in the system than would be if the system were fair. I'd be lying if I said the system is fair, but it should be fair. And that's what we're trying to do, is to point those things out. And if it were a simple solution right here, I would like to solve that. I welcome community input. I would hope to be able to meet and sit down with people to talk about ways that we could ensure that the system is fair and provides equal justice for everyone, no matter who that person is in the system. But I think that we do find that more people, people of color and marginalized, poverty-stricken people wind up in the system.
Thank you.
One of the questions I was asked, I'm not trying to not answer the question.
It's okay, I'll come back to it.
But talking about violent juveniles, and it's similar here. It's that it's got to be community-based. It can't just be the legal system that changes. It has to be the community. It has to be programs in place to educate people, to let them know that what's going on in their community, to help women, to help the community people who have kids that they're raising in bad environments, who have, I see single women with their young boys come into court, and I recognize that they are struggling. They want their boys to do well. Their boys are doing well, but then they commit these crimes with a firearm, and those put them in a very bad situation. And there's not a whole lot of things that the court system can do for those kids. And that's why there needs to be programs. There needs to be programs that teach these kids, who give them encouragement, who give them opportunity. It needs to be from the home, and it needs to be from the courthouse. It needs to be from the church. It needs to be throughout the whole environment, through our cities, through our circuits. It's not just one thing that's going to change, but I do see unequal. I do see racism.
Then let me follow up just there for you, because you focus a little bit on juveniles by suggesting, which I agree with, there has to be programs. What about those who are not juveniles and are minorities in the system?
You know, they're trying some things now with the Department of Corrections. It's a class that they're bringing in the families of the people who are charged with crimes and who are on probation. It's called Face It, where you try to get these people, you try to get individuals to understand what's going on and how to fix it. But there has to be there have to be programs for adults as well as juveniles. But the bottom line is, even if you provide those programs, if they don't want to change, or you send them back into the same environment, I just don't know whether you're going to get the change you want. But I know the Department of Corrections recently just instituted that class, and it's too soon to see how it affects anything.
All right, thank you. There was a little girl who was sitting here a little while ago, and she was a black little girl. My question to you is about diversity. What are the benefits of diversity in the legal profession, and are there any drawbacks?
Diversity is so important in our legal profession. We are fortunate to have a more diverse staff within the public defender's office now than when I started back in 2007. We have more people who look different than when I started back in 2007. And I think it's such a strong and important testament that clients see their attorneys or the staff who look different, who may look like them or may look like their neighbor. But I would not want to walk into an office where everyone looked different than me and expect them to understand my position or where I'm coming from. I would want there to be some type of diversity. And with diversity within our office comes different viewpoints on issues. So I love going into other attorneys' offices and talking with them about cases, particularly as you get more complex cases, talking to the diverse, not only what people look like, but their backgrounds, their culture, their viewpoints on things. I mean, we have people across the political spectrum within my office as well. And so it's not just about, what it may be physical diversity, but also, uniqueness amongst individuals. We can only holistically defend clients if we understand all the viewpoints and we can talk with one another about it. So diversity is really important within our office. It's important to our clients. It's important to me. And I hope that our office only continues to diversify. The only drawback I could see is I like to tell people that sometimes our office is kind of like one big dysfunctional family where everyone has an opinion and everyone has a different say in things. And that's what makes us a great office, is that we do celebrate the diversity that we do have and hope for more.
Awesome. Thank you. Judge?
It's not just important to have differences in race. It's important to have differences in gender, to have people, females, males, When I first took the bench, there were maybe 3 female judges. There were no female judges of color. Now we have 3 or 4 different judges who are female and who are of color. We have a lot more female judges. So we get different perspectives from their backgrounds. A lot of them have different backgrounds. We have Judge Spohr, who came from a very poor background, very smart individual who came up through and became a lawyer, and now she's a judge. And so they are able to give us different viewpoints so that, and when we talk about cases, when we talk about situations, when we talk about how that they can talk to us about and help us change our attitudes, help us change how we see things and how we respond to things. The one thing that I do see is that there's not a whole lot of diversity in the jurors, and we need more diversity in our jury panel than we have.
Excellent point. I think I'm going to wrap up my questions and then open it up to those who are here. My last question is dealing with some truths, right? Our legal system has a lot of issues with mental health, has a lot of issues with drug abuse, drug addiction, and we need our community partners to help us through that in the legal system. Can you tell me the work that you have done to help with those collaborations and what you think is in front of you to get that done as well?
We need to invest in our specialty court programs, our programs that are set up to help people with those underlying issues. So whether it's drug court that helps people with substance abuse, whether it is behavioral health court that helps people who are struggling with mental illness or perhaps treating their mental illness with drugs. We need to support our veterans treatment court. Those kinds of specialty courts that will connect our clients to services and our community partners are so important. To be able to do that, we need to make sure that we are out in the community, and that's something that I would do as public defender, to secure those connections, to make sure that our clients know not only just through those treatment programs or through those courts where they can get help, but also that we could have a social services division in our office. Years ago, we used to have one. It was so important because that person could then assist our attorneys with where that person needed to connect services. Is it Tri-County? Is it through Peace River? Do they need housing assistance? Could they possibly be partnered with the Homeless Coalition? Those kinds of programs would be critical in reducing the recidivism rate, making sure that client doesn't wind up back in the court system, because that's what we should be doing as public defenders, is solving problems. So that is something I hope to do. I have served as the attorney in our problem-solving courts before, and I have seen that they work, that they can help people, and it's even not only fiscally responsible to do that, because we shouldn't be warehousing people. That does not work, warehousing people in jails and prisons. We've tried it, it doesn't work. So we need to not only do something that is fiscally responsible at the beginning and saving money in the long time, but it's also our moral responsibility to do that, to help people. And that's what I hope to do as public defender with those community partners in the future.
Great, thank you.
Ms. Allen mentioned the courts that we have. We have veterans courts who deal with veterans who have specific issues that are related to their backgrounds, that are and there are other veterans who volunteer and community partners who come in those courtrooms, and there's a judge who oversees that. Then we have drug court, where individuals who have drug problems, there's also a judge that handles that, and there are community partners as well, and there's a program that is in place that is successful. There's also behavioral health, which she mentioned. So there are mental health experts and individuals to help to try to assist those people so they don't end up coming back and back and back into the system. But the one thing that recently was done that we decided to do is there's a lot of issues with competency. There's a lot of issues with mental health. A lot of the individuals who we see in our courtroom have those issues. The laws have recently changed. Instead of being reviewed every 6 months, they're reviewed every 60 days to try to get them resolution. We found that some of the people who were supposed to be committed to the state hospital weren't being sent to the hospital for months. And that has changed. And the reason that has changed is because one judge has been assigned to deal with those cases, to follow those people, to make sure that those people are getting the services that they need. I'm not going to tell you that it's foolproof, but I can tell you we've seen a difference as far as getting people help and being able to follow the people to make sure they get that help and hopefully keep them out of the system. But we do need community partners. We need people involved.
It's great. Thank you both. I think that, most people recognize that, yes, the law is the law, like people have to abide by the law, yet there are also there is a social work aspect of it. We don't have to like it, but there is some type of issues that there are several issues that people face that lead them to the system and figuring it out, like you said, recidivism. Now, I'm going to open it up for questions. You guys, do they have the note cards? Okay, if you have note cards, raise your hand and they will come around with a note card and a pen for you to write it down, and I'll address it. As we're doing that, I'm going to toss a little easy, like a little softball to you guys. What would you say is the kindest thing that someone has said about you? And what was the meanest thing someone has ever said about you? As it relates to your legal career. Set some boundaries here. I'm sorry about that.
I can't remember bad things, but I know there are bad things because I put them out of my memory. I can assure you there's lots of bad things, and they're out there on the internet if you want to look. But the kindest thing that happened to me Friday at the pig roast. A lady came up to me and she says, "You're not going to," I know that sounds funny, but it's a political rally in Davenport. But what she said to me was, she goes, "You're not going to remember me. You don't know me, but I can tell you that you impacted me. And when I saw you, I saw what a strong woman was, and I knew that you modeled for me," those aren't her words, I'm saying, "for what a strong woman was, and it changed my life." And I didn't know how to accept it. And she said, no, you did. And actually, close to the end of it, she came to me and she said, "When you have your watch party, I'm doing your watch party for you." So that we hear the negative all the time. We see people who are unhappy with our decisions, but it's nice to know that we have impacted someone through our work.
That's kind. I want to be clear. I wasn't trying to get you to talk negatively about yourself. Let me be clear. The reason that I asked that question is because when you're running for office, people can be very mean, right? And sorry, but especially as a woman, people question your intellect. And as a black woman, I can tell you a whole lot. But anyways, it makes it really challenging. So I wanted to give you an opportunity to either address or correct something that may be floating out there, and to confirm, affirm, or reiterate something positive that is being said about you.
Do you want me to?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes,
no,
please.
Okay, sorry. The kindest thing. There have been a number of scenarios I was trying to play out in my head about things that clients have told me over the years, but one in particular, I was new to felony in 2008, and I tried a case where my client was charged with robbery. And he was actually he had been convicted of armed robbery years ago, had been to prison, and was on basically supervised release when he picked up this new robbery case. Looked bad. not gonna lie. But once we started talking, there was a very, very good defense. We went to trial on it, and he was acquitted at trial. So we won his trial on the robbery case. And then I convinced my father, who does private practice, nothing to do with criminal law, but he's a very intelligent man, to handle his parole violation hearing, because that is not something that by statute the public defender's office is allowed to do. And he was indigent and could not afford an attorney on it. So my father defended him on his violation of conditional release, where he was found not in violation, and he was released from jail. And years later, I ran into him here in Lakeland at the Marshalls, where he was shopping with his family and his new little baby. And he came over and gave me a big hug. And his older daughter walked over and said, "How do you know this lady?" And he said, he's just a look of pure terror in his eyes. And I said, "Oh, he's a friend of mine." And he just sighed in audible relief. And he turned to his daughter and he said, "Yes, she's a really good friend of mine."
Yeah, very kind. That was actually kind of you. I have some questions from the audience. Judge, this one is for you. Have you ever removed yourself from a case, I'm assuming recusal for a personal bias? And if not, would you or would you not identify your own bias or personal connections to a case and remove yourself?
I'm required to disclose any kind of relationship that I might have with any of the litigants. I have removed myself from cases. I will remove myself from cases. I have removed myself from cases when I didn't think I could be fair to the litigant. So yes, I do.
Question for both of you. How do you manage your work-life balance?
You try your best. I think all of us who work in any type of capacity realize that there isn't a really good work-life balance. I think sometimes I am super mom. I am doing great. My kids look cute. They're happy. And then there are other days where I'm just barely hanging on. And I hope that the days that I am better at balancing outweigh the number of days that I'm not. But you just try to do the best that you can. And if you can do your best, my husband always tells me, he's like, even you at 50% is better than most attorneys at 100%. So you just have to give yourself some grace and allow yourself to know that if you have a bad day of work-life balance, get up tomorrow and try the same thing again and see if you have a different result.
Judge?
I don't have a good answer for that. All I know is I walk a lot. I walk a lot to think, and I walk a lot to get rid of the stress, and I walk a lot to walk the dog so he doesn't make me crazy.
All right, this question is a little more substantive. In the state of Florida, we have minimum mandatory sentencings, and there's some discretionary sentencings. And depending on what the crime is, whether or not a firearm was used, it's statutorily mandated in some cases, and in other cases it's not. Do either of you all have a perspective and or comment just in general about the concept of minimum mandatory sentences versus discretionary?
What the legislature originally intended to do with minimum mandatories and sentencing enhancements and designations has had the unintended consequence, perhaps unintended, of shifting the judicial discretion from where it should be with the judge onto the prosecutor's office. Because once the prosecutor decides to file whatever it may be, that particular charge that has a min-man, or designate somebody that they're going to seek sentencing as a sentencing enhancement, now the judge doesn't have discretion at sentencing. It's with the prosecutor. And that's not how it's supposed to be. And I've been in front of a judge before at a sentencing where my client was convicted of a prison releasee reoffender offense which means that the judge has no discretion, has to sentence that person to the mandatory minimum or to the maximum sentence. And the judge is up there saying, I don't want to do this, but the legislature is telling me I have no discretion. So I, as a public defender, I do not like them. And it makes it really hard when you tell a client, all right, the state's made you a plea offer. Here's your plea offer. And it's pretty reasonable, except that I think that you're not guilty, or you could go to trial, lose, and you're going to get the max. I mean, I don't blame clients for sometimes accepting a plea offer when they're not guilty because they don't want to risk going to trial and wind up spending years in prison because the judge has no discretion.
Sentencing is extremely complicated the way it is now. And in many, many cases, I have no discretion. Mandatory minimums are required depending on what is charged, depending on what the person pleads to, depending on what the jury finds as a verdict. A firearm, all the enhancers, those are statutorily driven. And I must follow, and my job is to follow the law. So in many cases, and the defense attorney will tell their own client, she doesn't have any discretion. This is what she has to this is what she has to sentence to. So that is mandated by the legislation. And if you want to change that, I'd suggest you tell your legislators.
All right, thank you. You know, when running for office, it's frequent that we'll hear people saying, the candidates talking about the problems and how they're going to solve them. But if they're running for re-election, they're talking about all that they've done and there's no problem. So it's an interesting dynamic, which this question brings up. What would you say is the biggest challenge in the public defender's office or in the judiciary, specifically here in Polk County, and what do you plan to do about it once elected?
Here, we have a problem with retention of our quality staff. And it's not necessarily just emblematic of Polk County. Really across the state, the turnover rate for public defenders is about 28% annually, which if you think about how many people that you are trying to train to be the best and most knowledgeable advocate in our courtroom, and then that person leaves, the clients suffer. So big problem is going to be retaining our quality staff, keeping them happy, because the money is never going to be there. I could never pay our staff what they're actually worth. But we have to figure out different ways to keep our staff happy and that they want to stay long term. Also, recruitment. That is a big problem. It used to be years ago, we would have applicants, packed an inch high from recent law school graduates that were applying to embark on a career of public service. We don't really see that anymore. And so we have to come up with different ideas and how we are going to recruit additional staff and keep them within our office. I am the optimist, and so I know that we can do it. I will say that even moving forward, I am hopeful that some of our skilled staff who left to pursue other opportunities may reconsider that, hopefully, in the future, and see if we can think about other innovative ways to make sure that we are making our employees feel valued and listened to and cared for. Because if we don't have enough people in the courtrooms, and if we don't